Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, legendary peeps, we're about to discuss one of the craziest topics that I will ever delve into. It deals with the origins of civilization, where we come from. The most important question that I believe we face as a society. Of course, we're all about the future, what lies ahead. But as I often love saying, how can we understand where we are going if we do not understand where we come from, if we do not understand our origins, our history? And of course, we learn a lot from history. And the further back we go, the less that we understand. But I believe that one of the greatest myths, or that myths are just myths. And there is much that we can learn from the myths, from the anecdotal accounts of history, of our ancient civilizations, of what they understood about the world. And whereas I've heard and I've studied many theories, from the theory of panspermia, the idea that basically bacteria from an asteroid landed on planet Earth, and of course millions of years later we evolved into these hominoids, and millions of years later into these humanoid creatures. Or the theory of Terence McKenna's stone ape. Many theories, but there is not a theory that I've come across that makes more sense to me than the theory from our oldest civilization, ancient Sumeria, modern day Iraq. And I want to go into the works of Lord Pi, who is this amazing researcher that put out some controversial information many years back. And this is information that has been echoed by many other great researchers, from Michael Asarian, who I'm a huge fan of the works of, David Icke, who a lot of people hear the name of and they think he's that crazy lizard guy that believes that the world is being controlled by reptilians. Well, there are a lot of crazy people, I will admit, that attach themselves to this idea, but if you look under this with scrutiny, you realize that there is a lot of credible evidence in relation to this. I mean, it makes a lot more sense than some of the other theories we have. I mean, in regards to our current understanding of our origins, we're supposed to be from these hominoids that we don't even really resemble. I mean, we're truly the only hairless ape. Our brains are much bigger than our ancestors, and there seems to be this missing link. Most archaeologists don't fully accept the explanation, the standard explanation that we have for our origins. There seems to be a lot of missing information. And this particular civilization, ancient Sumeria, I believe, accounts for this missing link better so than anything that I've come across. So look, let's have a look at the works of Lord Pi and hear what he has to say about the origins of civilization. You ready for this one? Take a deep breath, buckle up. This shit's about to get real.
There are four kinds of hominoids, just as there are four kinds of Australopithecines and four kinds of early Homos. It is their ancestors, the hominoids, that are the so-called pre-human ancestors. If you make that link, if you accept that hominoids are alive, and I go over a lot of proof in the book and in my presentation to show that yes, there are hominoids out there. There's plenty of room. We have captures, we have killings, we have enslavements. Trust me, the hominoids are there. Your skunk ape here in Florida, they're there. They really are real. So if you make that link that it's their ancestors, it means humans have no place in the natural flow of life on Earth. So then you have to ask the question, where did we come from? And in part 4 of the book, I deal with that, and I believe that the Sumerians, the ancient Sumerians, and what they had to say about it are correct. And what they say is that there's another planet in our solar system that was captured by our solar system as the solar system was forming. It is not in a counterclockwise circular orbit like the other natural planets. Because it's captured like a comet, it has a clockwise elliptical orbit of 3,600 years. On that planet, the Sumerians say, lives a superior race of beings known as the Anunnaki. They call the planet.
All right, now you're just being ridiculous. Okay. All right, so this guy, Lord Pi, is saying that the oldest civilization that we're aware of, modern day Iraq, going back about 6,000 years ago. So just think about it. Going back 2,000 years is a big deal. I mean, they're all wearing loincloths there. This is the whole time of Jesus or something like that. We go back another 4,000 years and we see this advanced civilization. And they're talking about how there are planets within our solar system. They've mapped out all the planets within our solar system, and there is a planet that we have not accounted for. Bearing in mind they're including the sun. There's this planet known as Planet X, and this planet has a 3,600-year elliptical orbit and is the home of a race of people called the the Anunnaki. You're talking about aliens over here, extraterrestrials. This sounds completely batshit crazy, doesn't it? But when you actually listen to this guy explain this, it is very convincing. I mean, it sure as hell makes a lot more sense to me than other theories like the flat earth theory. I mean, hell, I can basically take a telescope and look at the many planets, and I can see that they're spherical, and I can see video footage of us transcending the ionosphere, stratosphere, and seeing our planet in its spherical nature. But in regards to this, because we're looking at history, and because there is such corroborating evidence, you have to give this a lot more substance. So let's see what else Lord Pi has to say.
Nibiru, they called the people the Anunnaki. They're called the Anunnaki. The Sumerians, the first great culture that we have on the earth 6,000 years ago, right out of the Stone Age, possessing over 100 of the first that we attribute to a high society. They're the very best of the ancient cultures, preceding and better than the Egyptian, Greeks, and the Romans. In their writing, the first writing, of course, they said that there's another planet in the solar system that they called Nibiru that was captured and moves like a comet in a 3,600-year orbit. Our own astronomers know it's out there. They call it Planet X. It has gravitational effects on the outer planets. They can't find it because it's so far out. Exactly what the Sumerians say.
The superhuman race live?
They say that on that planet the Sumerians do live another culture called the Anunnaki, and that in our past, in the past of Earth, at around 400,000 years ago, they came here to work, to do a job, which I go over in the book, and while here they decided to create a slave, to genetically engineer a slave, using the creature of Earth as a genetic base to make the new slave and servant better adapted to the planet than they were.
That's us?
Okay. I know what you're thinking, guys. This sounds like the most ridiculous science fiction story. It sounds too unreal to even be put into a movie, right? Ridiculous. But here's the science. This is the stuff that we can definitively agree on. Science acknowledges that one of the oldest civilizations that we know of is modern-day Iraq, Mesopotamia. We find this area between the Tigris and Euphrates River, and they have the first of 100 things that we attribute to a civilization. They had the 6 decimal system. This is where we get 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, our advanced understanding of many of the things that we use in mathematics. They had the first law, the first agriculture. Their architecture was absolutely astonishing. Astrology, astronomy, where we get this from is from the ancient Babylonians. They are the ones that came up with the idea of the 12 zodiacs, 13 actually. And the ancient Egyptians, who were the most amazing civilization, got their knowledge from the ancient Babylonians, the Mesopotamians. I mean, without a doubt, the ancient Egyptians are considered to be, whoa. I mean, we attribute the ancient Greeks in Western culture as being the masters of understanding, of wisdom, so forth. Now, these great figures like Pythagoras, like Plato, their knowledge is from the ancient Egyptians, which is in turn from the Babylonians. So we accredit our understanding to the ancient Sumerians. I mean, we have thousands and thousands of years of history where we're seeing nothing, and maybe other than the Indus Valley in India, we see this civilization emerging from nowhere, and they're ridiculously advanced. Now, they're saying, rather than saying that their knowledge is something that their culture has created, I mean, most cultures, most races, they always want to claim that their knowledge is based from their people. I mean, black people always saying this kind of stuff. Man, black people created everything. Man, a black person created the first wheel. Black people were responsible for the most brilliant stuff that was ever created, Joe. You came from a black person. Now, rather than taking on this attitude, which most civilizations tend to do, they tend to credit themselves for coming up with their inventions, their amazing technologies. These people speak about how they got their knowledge from a race of people called the Anunnaki, which are a people that lived on a planet known as Nibiru, according to Lord Pi and many other researchers. I mean, this is all written in cuneiform writings. These writings that are over 6,000 years old. And of course, a lot of people would be thinking, the skeptics would be thinking, well, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, we could, as a society, we could be headed towards nuclear destruction, and as a result, we decide to get all our biblical writings. For instance, all the Christians, they get all their biblical writings and they put this in some kind of a capsule, so many years later, when we see humans populating the planet after this nuclear destruction, they will have an understanding of the religion of Christianity. And what they deduce from these writings is there must have been all of this biblical crazy stuff, like the parting of the seas and all the stuff that you see within Christianity. For instance, Jesus dying and coming back a few days later, all that kind of stuff. And you'd say, well, obviously that wasn't true and it's just their writings. But here's the thing. These writings have corroborating evidence to support this stuff. So they not only speak about how they were able to create these advanced technologies and attribute this stuff to the Anunnaki, but they have diagrammatical representations of amazing stuff that, as far as we're aware, they shouldn't have been aware of. I mean, they had diagrammatical representations of the planets within our solar system. So they had 10 planets, including the sun, and a planet which we don't understand. I mean, this is the crazy shit. If you're still listening to this, and I'm still with you, there is this lore in science known as Bode's lore. Now, this blew my mind. According to this lore, if we look at any solar system and we have a few planets, we should be able to determine the other planets within a solar system, because you can see this pattern between the distance of planets within solar systems. Now, according to Bode's lore, we should have a planet between Jupiter and Mars. Now, this pattern is observed within other solar systems, but we can't find the planet between Jupiter and Mars. Apparently, it's not there. According to Bode's lore, it should be there. Now, according to the ancient Sumerians, there is a planet known as Planet X, Nibiru, which has a 3,600-year elliptical orbit, which is not that crazy as far as planets go. And every 3,600 years, these people known as the Anunnaki, they come off this planet in between Jupiter and Mars when it's going through these two planets, and they go to planet Earth and they affect the civilization. And what they did was, apparently, according to Lord Pi and Zecharia Sitchin, who is another brilliant researcher that has studied these cuneiform writings, only a few hundred people are able to translate this, and they all come up with the corresponding understanding that this story is legit according to the ancient Sumerians. And they speak about a race of people called the Anunnaki that came to planet Earth, and it gets even crazier. It gets crazier than the most advanced science fiction stories that I've ever come across. They speak about how these people took the current hominoids, these ape-like creatures, and because they wanted these creatures to have the intelligence to do their work, their bidding, they genetically engineered them. It sounds crazy, right? I know it sounds crazy. And yes, I understand that I'm losing credibility here, but I'm telling you, this stuff makes sense in that this is what they're saying. And whereas scientifically we don't give a lot of credence to anecdotal evidence, we say that, oh, anyone could just report something. When there is corresponding evidence, when there is circumstantial evidence, you have to give that some kind of credibility. And when this civilization that is so advanced, we don't understand how they came up with all this stuff, is explaining how they got their knowledge from, and explaining how they did it, explaining the history within their writings, within the Enuma Elish, which is their creation story. Lord Pi is going to go into this in a second if you guys are still with me. They speak about how this was done through a guy by the name of Enki, who basically was this scientist from Planet X. And the reason they came to this planet is very, very important. Apparently, this is where the evidence becomes, whoa, this shit gets heavy. Now, apparently the Nibiruans, the Anunnaki, came from Planet X because their planet was lacking a resource known as gold. Now, it sounds crazy. Why would they need gold? Well, gold has a lot of many brilliant properties. Its conductivity. But one of the properties it has is it has resistance from radiation, from radioactivity. Now, according to the story, according to their stories within these cuneiform writings, they were wanting to sprinkle the gold, of course through their science, apply this gold in their atmosphere to act as a barrier from the radioactivity that their sun was emitting. Apparently the planet was in danger of being blown apart. Now this sounds crazy. This sounds like a really creative science fiction or fantasy story. But the crazy thing is we discovered not even that long ago that gold does actually have many properties, and one of the properties of this is to actually protect the planet from radioactivity. It can be used this way. So this crazy idea that is found within the stories of the Anunnaki has substance. I mean, how the hell were they to understand the fact that gold can act as a reflection from radioactivity? And this is what we find within the stories. And I'm familiar that there are many debunkings of this story. People talk about how this stuff is not reliable, how the translations aren't that accurate, even though there are many people that are translating this writing, the cuneiform writings, and they're all coming up with very, very similar translations. And even though there is so much corresponding evidence to support this, like Bode's lore, the gold having properties of reflection from radioactivity, and the list goes on and on and on. And there are many other civilizations that speak of similar stories. Ancient Egypt. But I'm not going to go too far into this. I've probably gone into too much depth. But is this stuff fascinating or what? Let's hear what else Lord Pi has to say.
That's us. Basically, the Anunnaki said in their writings that the Sumerians left behind, we shall make the Adamu. They called their slave servant Adamu plural, which comes down to us in the Bible as the Adam. We shall make the Adamu in our own image, after our own likeness, word for word in the Bible, and they did that. So
no, wait a minute.
we look like
that the modern race of people were genetically engineered by this superhuman race of aliens that came from other planets,
and that we look like them in the cylinder seals that we have, the 5,000 or so cylinder seals that we have out of the Sumerian culture, depicting gods and humans on the same cylinder seal at the same time, they always look the same.
And this is why we only use 10% of our brains.
They genetically engineered our brains. They gave us their bodies. You will notice, we have tremendously reduced strength from primates. If we descended from primates, where did our strength go? Every primate is 5 to 10 times stronger than we are pound for pound. How did we lose 2 chromosomes? All primates have 48 chromosomes. We have 46. That is an awful lot of DNA. Where did it? If you read the Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki flourished from around 400,000 years ago. And by the way, they called where they lived in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, the Eden. That was their word for where they lived.
We've heard it.
Oh, smack! That sounds familiar. I mean, I was never into Bible studies as a kid, but I distinctly remember this place called Eden? Eden? What the? Eden? So, here's the crazy shit. The Bible stories, right? Now, bearing in mind that Babylon predates the Bible. So, a lot of the ideas that we find within the Bible, such as Eden, Adam and Eve, are quite literally referencing the creation story of the Babylonians, the Enuma Elish, which goes into a place called Eden, which has a race of people called the Adama, which are basically us. It's quite possible that Adam was a representation of a race of people. I mean, I know this stuff sounds crazy, but when you have a look at the corroborating evidence, there is just too much coincidence. There is just too much patterns that are embedded within this story that you can see and correspond to so much of our understanding of the history of the world that I have to give this stuff a bit of substance. What?
Adam, we've heard Eden.
Well, it turns out that a lot of the Old Testament is an attempt to rewrite the Sumerian epics of creation because they were considered to be the guys with the word.
I have to break here.
Alright, the rest of the video gets a little crazy here, but just to recap this is the most ridiculous science fiction story I've ever heard. And look, I'm inviting you guys to consider this, because the fact of the matter is that we do have cuneiform writings. We do have a civilization that is well versed in their understanding of many of the things that we attribute to a first civilization: lore, astronomy, mathematics. The list goes on and on and on. And most of the most brilliant civilizations that we are aware of have drawn their information from these people, from the Mesopotamians. And they accredit their history to a race of people called the Anunnaki, and it's explained within their creation story. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? It sounds absolutely batshit crazy. But what's even crazier is that it even explains the pyramids. I mean, the ancient Egyptians, they speak about how their pyramids were built by them. By them. The Egyptians talk about within their writings, their kings, they have these scrolls or tablets or some sort where they speak about their history and explain how the pyramids were built. All right, so the people that want to say we don't understand how the pyramids were built, I mean, basically you don't want to give substance to what the ancient Egyptians are saying. I can understand that because it doesn't make any sense. How could these people have built the fucking pyramids? It doesn't. You guys don't have the technology. I mean, the Europeans, they discover the Egyptians, these black people. You know, apparently the Egyptians, a lot of them were the people of Kush, the Kemites. They were these black Egyptians that had a tremendous understanding of the world, and they had an advanced level of technology. And of course, Europeans are saying, well, you guys can't be that smart, so you couldn't have built this stuff, even though they're saying they built this stuff. But check this out. They're saying, according to their writings, that the people of Egypt built this stuff, built the pyramid, through the aid of the guardians of the sky. What? The guardians of the sky. And they depict these people in the same way that the Babylonians depicted these people. Sounds crazy, right? So what we can gather from that, at least according to their writings, in their words, and this is all I'm doing, I'm saying, well, you know what, rather than being a skeptical dude and saying that anything that these people say must be bullshit, I'm looking at what they have to say and then looking at the corroborating evidence, the circumstantial evidence, and I'm saying, well, there must be, I guess, some truth to this. I mean, it's easy to debunk anything if you want to take on the attitude that everyone's a liar, but I don't think it's quite that simple. And these people are saying that the pyramids, a lot of their technologies were built through the aid of a race of people called the Anunnaki. And take, for example, the symbol that we generally are familiar with relating to Egypt, the symbol of the Ankh. The Ankh, right? Now, the symbol of the Ankh, contrary to popular belief, represents the Anunnaki. Check this shit out. Check this shit out.
Now the word Ankh, A-N-K-H, again, ancient languages did not use the vowels. But this Ankh does not mean what we're told it means. We're told it means the key of life, or breath. No, in fact it refers to a word that is known in Babylon and Sumeria as the Anunnaki. Filling in the vowel sounds, we have the Anunnaki. And the Anunnaki, or the Anunnaki, meant the heavenly serpents, literally the gods.
That's crazy. So here's the thing. I know it may seem to the most skeptical people that you're just filling in the words here, but this is actually legit. Most of these ancient civilizations, they did not use vowels. So when we see Ankh, I mean, naturally that would spell to me Anunnaki, but it makes perfect sense that it can spell out Anunnaki. And when you consider that the ancient Egyptians, they derived their knowledge from the ancient Babylons, they were the oldest civilization. Their knowledge predates the Egyptians, and it's very, very similar. Then it makes perfect sense that just like the ancient Babylonians worshipped the Anunnaki, they were revered. They were so revered that they weren't even allowed to represent them in their real form. That's why you see in a lot of the depictions, in the cuneiform depictions, they depict these people as being very much like them, but they have these weird representations. They have wings. They're like almost like angels, which is apparently to represent their ability to fly, their transcendent technology. So ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, I invite you to consider the shit out of this information. I understand that it may sound crazy. It may sound like it belongs almost in the world of flat earth, but I don't believe so. I think there are certain things like flat earth which seem cuckoo, bearing in mind we can so easily use that technology right now to actually have a look at the planet, see its spherical nature. We can have a look through a telescope and see the other spherical planets. And of course, there'll be people that say, well, you know, it's because all these planets are spinning so fast that it looks like they're spherical, but they're actually flat. And I think within reason, you can clearly understand that the Earth is not flat. Sorry, flat earthers. When it comes to history, there is a lot of things that we do not know. We do not understand our past with as much clarity. Most archaeologists understand that there is this missing link. And when you have a look at the history of the planet, alternative history, and we call it alternative history because we don't want to accept it. When you have a look that there are over 30,000 texts from different parts of the world speaking about very similar stories. Not just the ancient Babylonians, but the ancient Egyptians. I come from a place called Ghana, where the people there, they speak about, there is a tribe within Mali and in certain areas of Ghana, they speak about their origins. And they have records talking about a race of people from the Sirius star, 8.6 light years away from planet Earth. And they understood the distance. They understood the orbiting patterns, the way this planet looked like. This knowledge that, how on earth could these people have had this? I mean, they've had this knowledge for apparently thousands and thousands of years. And just like the ancient Babylonians, I mean, for people that want to say this stuff is ridiculous, how do you disprove the fact that these people in their cuneiform writings mapped out the different planets, understood what Pluto looked like before we even discovered this in the 1930s or 40s. They understood the elliptical orbits of these planets. They understood the fact that there was another planet called Planet X, which granted we cannot see now. It makes a lot of sense, particularly when you consider Bode's law, that there should be a planet between Jupiter and Mars, but there is not. So, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, here is something to consider. And if I haven't lost you here, I think it's very important to look at things that we don't necessarily agree with. I think it's always important to be constantly questioning our default position. I know a lot of people believe in the Earth, let's say, being only 10,000 years old. They tend to be Christians. There are a lot of people that believe purely in the science of our times and therefore adopt the current notion of panspermia. A lot of the hippies out there that want to buy into Terence McKenna's idea of the stoned ape theory, that basically we evolved from a bunch of apes that took some psychedelic mushrooms and their brains grew and later on developed into these weird, hairless apes that we call humans, that are basically a cancer on this planet. And this is one thing to consider. The fact that we are so different to all the other animals on this planet. So different. We're basically a cancer on this planet. If you had a look at the planet Earth through one of these satellites and you saw it in all its spherical nature, you would see amongst all the plant life and all the water this weird black mush, the human race that seems to be just absorbing everything. It seems like we're the only species that doesn't seem to work synergistically with our environment. And it's quite possible that because there was this intervention in our history where this race of people, the Anunnaki, came down apparently over 400,000 years ago and messed up our DNA. This is why we have this weird schizoid mentality if you compare us to the other inhabitants of this planet. Anyway, I know how batshit crazy this sounds, but this shit is heavy. And ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, peace out. Keep it real. Let us know what you thought of this video. Drop us some comments. Let us know if you think I'm speaking complete dribble, if this information is complete dribble. I will put some references here. And open your minds. Open your minds to different information. Peace out, keep it real, don't drive and text. Until next time, Chris Shaw.
Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we
All
are
matter
powerful
is
beyond
ultimately
measure.
quantum energy that originates from another dimension.
Eventually, intelligence will become substrate independent. We will